Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Today we're asking the question, is Roboute Guilliman the true heir to the Empire? Was he the Primarch, most like his father? General spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from across the Warhammer 40k universe, so you have been warned. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Now, you know what I love about the lore. Okay, yes, there is a lot. But importantly for today, every once in a while when rereading an older story, there's always something that strikes your mind or attention in a way it never did previously. And that's exactly what happened to inspire our discussion today. A little while ago, I was browsing through the heresy novel The First Heretic, when a comment by the Primarch Lorgar really managed to stop me in my tracks, starting those gears within my mind turning. Now, in the period after Monarchia's destruction, Lorgar is discussing his brothers with Corferon, and Corferon tells his Primarch that while Lorgar may be the son who most looks like the Emperor, he is in fact the least like him. His brothers can destroy and kill with smiles on their faces, but not him. Ah, how times change, eh? Their conversation then continues on, specifically covering other brothers, Magnus, the Lion, Horus, talking of the facets of the Emperor they most represent, the positive and the negative. It's a conversation we'll definitely cover more in depth one day when we're focusing on Lorgar. But it's then that Lorgar broaches the subject of Guilliman, and their opinion is particularly interesting. And Guilliman? Lorgar lets his hands rest on his knees again, a smile inched across his features. Guilliman. Corferon's narrow lips moulded into a grimace, opposing his Primarch's smirk. Guilliman is your father's echo, heart and soul. If all else went wrong, he would be heir to the Empire. Horus is the brightest star, and you carry your father's face, but Guilliman's heart and soul are cast in the Emperor's image. Lorgar nodded, still smiling to see his advisor's bitterness. My Macraggian brother is as easy to read as an open book. Now that for me is fascinating. Firstly, before we carry on, we do have to keep in mind here that the word bearers are motivated by a great deal of bitterness towards Guilliman and the Emperor. This is in the aftermath of Lorgar's chastisement, where the Emperor chose Guilliman to raise Monarchia, essentially telling Lorgar that the Ultramarines are the example he should aspire to. So it's little wonder the word-bearers would lump them in the same despised boat, so to speak. But is it true? Or are they true, considering it's really two different points? Is Guilliman the most akin to the Emperor, his echo, heart and soul? And was Guilliman the heir to the Empire? Well, let's begin with that one first. If all else went wrong, was Guilliman the heir to take the Emperor's place? Well, we know Rogel most definitely thought so during the heresy, or at least felt Guilliman was the more suitable Lord Commander, famously telling the Custodes that in Guilliman's absence, he is Lord Commander, clearly implying that he only had the role because Guilliman wasn't on Terra. I think in terms of running the Empire, Roboute would be the absolute logical choice. Ultramar was by far and away the largest realm any Primarch created and governed, before their reunion with the Emperor of course. Ultramar was absolutely vast in the days of the Great Crusade, And I think that's where the word-bearer logic is coming from. Guilliman is absolutely the most logical choice to run an empire. But, and there is a big but here, I feel there's actually a big difference between being a Lord Commander and the Emperor's heir. The role of Lord Commander arose only due to the heresy, Horus's betrayal, to make it easier for the Imperium's defense to be organized in the Emperor's absence. In essence, a replacement War Master. The Emperor's intentions for the Imperium were always for mortal humans to govern themselves, not the Primarchs. He felt, perhaps rightly so, that his sons would never be able to understand the real concerns of everyday people. So for me, while the word-bearer's logic is right, Guilliman would most likely have been the most logical choice to run an empire. I'm not sure that's necessarily what was needed for the position and figurehead of Emperor. For me, I think the Emperor made clear his faults with that original choice, his first Lord Commander, so to speak. The War Master, Horus. Horus was always going to be War Master. As much as I love discussing alternatives, the truth is the Emperor would have chosen no one else. Yes, it's hard to forget the traitor he became, but the Horus that was the brightest star, the most successful, the most charismatic, the most beloved by his brothers, including Sanguinius, the most favoured by their father. I think in revealing some of his flaws, such as his arrogance, it really almost got to the point where we were thinking why on earth would the Emperor ever have chose him. But over the last year or so, that old Horus is really being shown again, showing us why he was the standout son. We've seen it in Mortarian's Primarch novel, and more recently within Sanguinius's. The Emperor's heir would have been the Emperor. There was only one Primarch who could have universally been accepted as that. And yes, I'm including Sanguinius in that. We've seen that Mortarion was no fan of his. The only heir to the throne was the same man who was the only choice for War Master. It could have, and I believe would have been, Horus Lupercal. Now, you may have noticed I said one Primarch, and that's because I don't think you can rule out the Sigillite. The Emperor himself relied on his friend's advice and counsel. He knew how important a role Malcador played. In any figurative scenario where the Emperor was taken out of the picture, Malcador would have remained vital. Whether you believe the Emperor loved the Primarchs or not, obviously I'm one who does, he was undoubtedly aware of their flaws, which again ties back to the decision that they were never intended to govern the Imperium. With that logic, the Emperor may well have not chosen a Primarch and placed the burden on Malcador instead. Or if Horus was the figurehead of Emperor, then Malcador would have remained vital in instilling the Emperor's intentions of mortal humans governing themselves. Horus gets a lot of scorn for the short story where he scoffs at this suggestion to Malcador's face. But what exactly is Guilliman doing now within the current day Imperium? Taking control away from the mortal human governors and placing his Astartes in control. At the end of the day, Guilliman is no different at his core than the rest of his brothers. A successor emperor would most likely have had to have been a Primarch, for simple figurehead propaganda purposes, that figure to keep the Imperium united. In that case, Horus was the only real choice for me, over Sanguinius. Sanguinius was beloved, but they've been making it clear recently, within Mortarian's Primarch novel and Sanguinius' own, that there was very much a reason why Horus was the only real choice, not the Angel. Guilliman could have absolutely run the Empire the best, but he couldn't have been the rallying symbol that Horus was. And that is what the Emperor needed to be. Can you imagine if Sanguinius returned to the Imperium now, for example? Do you really think there wouldn't be mass calls for him to be the Imperial Regent instead of Guilliman? There absolutely would. And that would be the case with a Prime Horus, before the heresy ever transpired. Figuratively, the word-bearers may well be right, but literally, I couldn't ever see it happening without someone above Guilliman. Now, was Guilliman the most akin to the Emperor? His heart, soul, and echo? The short answer is, I don't think Guilliman was any more or less like his father than the rest of his brothers. They did, as we all know, inherit their own individual traits, natures, and gifts. There are many Primarchs you could argue who are most like their father. Magnus was the only brother who remotely came close to the Emperor's psychic abilities. He shared his love of knowledge and education, the zest for elevating humanity through it. As a more psychic being than physical, you could argue he was the closest to the Emperor's true nature. Vulcan, alone of all the Primarchs, truly understood what a precious gift it was to be human, who alone of all his brothers wanted nothing to do with war, who could have genuine human conversations with his father, who was, after all, still a human. Let's not forget he too alone of all his brothers was a perpetual, the same as his father, as Malcador. Then there's Sanguinius, the worshipped symbol, who walked in the same shoes as his father in many ways, who inherited his gift of foresight, whose view on war was very much the same as the Emperor's, a necessary evil, who did so only reluctantly, but with full force when needed. Lionel Johnson, the cold calculating mind, who saw through all the pomp and circumstance, to the reality, to the truth, who alone of all the Primarchs, including Guilliman, was possibly the only Primarch told of the gods of chaos, because he alone could resist their whispers from the start. With Guilliman, I see a love for humanity. I see a dedication to his father's dream. I see a unique ability to plan and coordinate, to adapt, perhaps greater than any of his brothers, perhaps the one Primarch who could truly envisage a galaxy-spanning Imperium, which again ties into why he would be the best choice to run it. But his heart and soul? An echo? No, I can't see that. For me, just look at Guilliman's reaction to the Emperor within the current Imperium to see how that's not the case. Guilliman is truly scarred by the notion that the Emperor used the Primarchs. Regardless of your view of the Emperor, that is a core part of him. Even with me, someone who believes he did come to love the Primarchs, he did clearly use them as well. That is a core part of his nature. For Guilliman to be an echo, that core representation of his heart and soul, he would truly have had to accept that. And it's something Guilliman can't quite get over. For me, Lionel Johnson, for example, would have been able to deal with that knowledge far easier. He would have taken it much more within his stride. Now, to play devil's advocate to my own opinion, Guilliman is referred to by the Emperor within Dark Imperium Godblight as my greatest son. Now yes, it's all ambiguous if this scene did actually transpire like this or not. And according to Trajan Valoris, it didn't. But it's a very telling line. And if Guilliman was the son most akin to his father, or the one moulded to take over the Empire, well, that line would make a lot of sense then. It doesn't answer the question of why Guilliman wasn't chosen as War Master though, because if he was the heir apparent, then it makes no sense why he wasn't chosen as War Master. That's really the one sticking point for me. Guilliman is no more like or different to his father than any of his brothers. But again, I understand why the word bearers would say it. To further Lorgar's bitterness. To further that growing divide. That hatred. Lorgar had to look from his knees as Guilliman and his perfect legion stood before him, basking in their father's light, while he and his legion were forced into the dirt. Lorgar sees that perfect son as everything to despise, the chosen over him. For Lorgar, the Emperor chose Guilliman not because Lorgar was wrong for his worship, not because the Ultramarines were the most logical legion to compare to his own, the two largest, one with a good record, the other without, but simply because Guilliman is the chosen, and he himself the discarded. To Lorgar, Guilliman represents everything wrong with their father, and that is a divide seized upon by the bitterness of Cor Pharaon to further the divide with Guilliman. But as always everyone, what do you think? If the Emperor had to choose an heir, someone to be the next Emperor, who do you feel he would have chose? If it had to be a Primarch, do you feel it would be Guilliman? Or like me, do you feel the only choice had to be Horus? What do you feel about Malcador? Do you feel he would have been absolutely vital? Could he even have been the next Emperor? Could the Primarchs have been trusted to run the Imperium on their own? And what of the question that Guilliman was the Emperor's echo, his heart and soul? Do you feel that Guilliman truly represents this, more than any of his brothers? Or like me, do you see them as all equal, representing different traits in different ways, that none are more alike or more different than the other? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.